Hey guys, what's going on? Thank you for joining me in another fragrance review. Today we're going to be looking at a oud oil. It's from the house of Ensar Oud, and the oud that we're looking at today is called Oud Yusuf. So this is from the house of Ensar Oud, and Ensar Oud is probably one of the most popular and well respected and well renowned oud distillers in the market. Ensar himself, from what I've read online, some of the videos that I've seen on YouTube, he comes across like he breathes and lives oud. He's a true artist from what I gather, from what I see, and you can really tell that he's incredibly passionate about oud, and that comes across in his compositions as well. I've got about 6 to 7 samples here in this box, beautiful box by the way, which will all be reviewed on this channel. I picked them up, I believe, at the start of this year, and Oud Yusuf is the first one I'll be reviewing, and in the coming weeks there'll be a few more reviews from the house of Ensar Oud. So what's so special about the house of Ensar Oud, from what I've read online, is that traditionally distillers would use the best quality oud chips, not for distilling oud oil, but rather selling it off as chips for it to be burnt as incense. You can burn oud wood and it creates a beautiful scent. But what Ensar does is that he uses these best quality chips, rather than selling them to be burnt as incense, he uses them to distill into oud oil, and so it creates the most beautiful oud in the market. So that was a little bit of a background regarding Ensar Oud and the man himself. What does Oud Yusuf spell like? So for me, when I apply Oud Yusuf, I get this very strong, intense, ripe, exotic fruits. Now the fruity notes I get are very, very ripe. It's important to remember that the fruity notes for me are very ripe. They're exotic fruits, and these whole fruits are engulfing some spices, and the spices that I pick up are cardamom, clove especially, and a touch of tobacco as well. And for me, the opening, due to that ripe fruitiness and those spices that I pick up, it reminds me of this mango pickle that my mum and her mum, my grandma, used to make. And I remember when I was about 6 years old, me and my family, we went to India because my mum's sister was getting married. And when we were coming back to England, my mum and my grandma and other members of my family, they were making this mango pickle, and this mango pickle in my language is called morobbo. And the smell of mango pickle, it's very ripe, as you can imagine pickle being, and quite sweet as well, which is one of the scent profiles of Oud Yusuf, is that it's quite sweet. And the mango pickle also has some spices added into it, and it's the clove. Now the smell of the ripe mango, the sweetness, the punchy, little bit tartiness, the ripeness, and the spices for me, the smell of morobbo is the same that I got in Oud Yusuf. And the smell of morobbo, which is such a beautiful tasting dish by the way, and the smell of it and wearing this, it kind of just conjured up this beautiful memory that I had of spending time with my family in India. So the opening for me is this gorgeous, beautiful, sweet, ripe, exotic fruit with those spices. But as the fragrance develops into the heart, I find that it's then joined by a very juicy woodiness. And the woodiness in the scent is very much on my skin in the background. The ripe fruity notes in the opening are still prominent, as well as the spices. But in the heart, you pick up a juicy, woody backbone, and there's also a touch of dry dustiness as well. As the fragrance develops, the strong, intense fruitiness that I had, the spiciness, it starts to mellow out a little bit, and for me, in the heart, it starts to develop into one really complex note. The fruits, the spices, the woodiness, the earthiness, and the dustiness all combine together to be one very, very complex note. As the fragrance develops after the 10-hour mark, where it's becoming near the end of the oud itself, the scent really changes on my skin and becomes more of this dry, dusty oud with a lot of green grassiness, believe it or not. I'd really pick up a green grassiness in the dry down, but then there's still a touch of that fruity, ripe fruitiness from the opening. In the air, Oud Yusuf for me has a sweetness to it, but up close it has this little bit of punchy, ripe fruitiness and that touch of tobacco as well. So up close it smells a lot different to it as it does in the air. And that was the case for other people's reactions for when I was wearing Oud Yusuf as well. For me, people was the compliments that I was getting, and I did get compliments with Oud Yusuf, was that it smelled very sweet in the air. But when they came quite close and smelt it when it was quite close to my skin, they felt that it had a bit of a punch to it, a bit of a kick, and it's that intense ripe fruitiness that I picked up. Oud Yusuf is unlike many ouds I've tried. It's unlike many stereotypical ouds. This is not a barnyard oud. It's not a funky oud. It's not an overly woody oud as well. Oud itself means wood, and it's not a woody oud. This is like a very sweet, fruity, very accessible oud. Now, if someone was to ask me what's the best oud to try out for a beginner who's never tried oud before, it would be Oud Yusuf. And a lot of the times when you're talking about accessible fragrances, not just oud in general, just accessible fragrances, they tend to be quite bland, quite boring. But for me, Oud Yusuf, it's accessible, but it's probably best in class. This is a spoiler, but this is probably the best oud I've ever tried in my life. It's up there with the Hindi 100k by Feel Oud, and that's a barnyard oud. So them two are polar opposites. This has no dirty notes, no funkiness. It's a very sweet, very accessible, very pleasing oud. And even though it's a pleasing oud, it's quite mesmerizing as well. It really is. Every time I wore this, oud sort of puts you in a state of mind, and this oud definitely does that. In terms of performance, I found on my skin the projection was quite moderate. When I was sitting down, I had a nice moderate scent cloud around me. However, when I moved around, the sillage, when you walk past people, is very strong. It can fill up a room when you walk into it very fast. But when you're sitting down, chilling, you have a nice scent bubble around you, and you can really smell it on yourself and enjoy it for yourself as well. Longevity for me was 12+ hours. This one just goes on and on. Like I've said, guys, I was incredibly impressed with Oud Yusuf, and I'm contemplating picking up a bottle as well. I'm thinking about maybe selling a few of my decants that I don't use anymore, selling off a few watch straps that I don't wear, and just anything lying around the house, sell off a little bit, just raise some funds and possibly buy a 3-gram bottle of Oud Yusuf. And I believe that 3-gram bottle will last me throughout my life. To me, this is a magical scent, and for me, I'm going to be quite strongly in this, that I think everyone should at least try Oud Yusuf. I think even people that are not into oud should definitely get their nose on this. A sample of this, a 0.3 gram, is I think £27 or £30 on his site, so it is not too expensive for the quality that you're getting. I think that's a fair price. Overall rating for me for Oud Yusuf is going to be a perfect score of 5 out of 5. I was just mesmerized by the scent. It's a scent which is incredibly pleasing. It has that ripe fruitiness that reminds me of mango pickle and reminds me of this very pleasant memory from my childhood. The performance is excellent. I think it's up there with Feel Oud's Hindi 100k for me as one of the best ouds I've tried so far. So it's a perfect score of 5 out of 5. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you have, then please do leave me a like and a comment below. And until next time, my friends, see you later.